Like what you see here? Then be sure to subscribe to Jaguar 7, an all-new channel focusing on the history of Major League Baseball. Click the card in the upper right corner or the link in the description to subscribe now. And now, on with our feature presentation. December 30th, 1995. We're walking in Memphis at Liberty Bowl Memorial Stadium for the Liberty Bowl between the Stanford Cardinal out of the Pac-10 and the East Carolina Pirates, an independent. Now this game was notable for a few reasons, not the least of which was the fact that East Carolina ended the season on a 6-game winning streak by defeating the Cardinal by a final score of 19-13. For East Carolina, it was revenge after they got blown out 30-0 in the Liberty Bowl last year at the hands of Illinois. This was a chance to prove that they belonged in the Liberty Bowl, and they took advantage of it. It was also notable for the fact that the MVP of the game was quarterback Kwame Ellis, who plays for Stanford, making it one of the rare times, much like Super Bowl V between the Baltimore Colts and Dallas Cowboys, that the MVP of the game came from the losing team. It was also notable for being the final game of Stanford quarterback Mark Butterfield's career, and you can learn more about him thanks to a video I did on my NFL channel by clicking the card in the upper right corner. Regardless of how you want to look at it, the 1995 Liberty Bowl was notable for a bunch of reasons that still live on nearly 3 decades later. But what you might not realize in all of this madness is the crazy story of how Stanford even got to play in this bowl game in the first place. Because Stanford, amazingly enough, was not even supposed to go bowling at all. In fact, it's kind of crazy that they got a postseason invite of any kind at all. Now, you might think that this is an over-exaggeration on my end on the surface, especially when you look at Stanford's record and look at their resume. And if you're just going off of that, trust me, you're 100% right. But when you realize the full story, you learn just how incompetent the Stanford athletic department was, and how they almost single-handedly sabotaged their team's chances at playing in a bowl. Because this is the story behind what might just be, considering the circumstances, the dumbest bowl controversy in the history of Stanford football. Before I talk about the giant mess involving the Cardinal and how their postseason hopes were hanging on by a thread, we need some context to understand just how good Stanford was, because it will truly put into perspective just how badly this entire situation was bungled, to the point where it's comical that the Cardinal were even in this mess in the first place. The year is 1995, and no one knows what the future of Stanford football holds under new head coach Tyrone Willingham. After Bill Walsh came out of retirement off of the heels of 3 Super Bowl wins, which you can learn more about by clicking the card in the upper right corner, he resigned following 2 disappointing seasons in a row, including a 1993 season where they went 4-7, and a 1994 season where they went just 3-7-1. Now, Willingham, who hadn't been an offensive or a defensive coordinator at any level in the last 2 decades, let alone a head coach, was going to be running the ship. I don't think anyone had any real expectations for the Cardinal heading into this season, especially since this was a program that had won just 1 bowl game since 1979, and had failed to make a bowl in 6 of the past 8 seasons. However, to the surprise of a ton of people, Willingham had the Cardinal firing on all cylinders. It had Stanford looking like one of the top teams in the country. They were one of the pleasant surprises of the year, especially after they started the season off 4-0-1, with a win on the road against the number 12 ranked Oregon team. By the middle of the season, not only was Stanford ranked inside the top 25 of the AP poll, but they were ranked as high as number 16, considering the fact that they ended the 1994 season with losses in 7 of their final 9 games. No one saw this coming. This was the first time since 1992 that they were ranked past the month of September. And when all was said and done, they ended the regular season with an impressive record of 7-3-1, including a 5-3 record in Pac-10 play, and including a win in the big game against Cal, making this the first time since 1992 that they won their biggest rivalry game. And there were a bunch of reasons why Stanford was playing well in 1995. You had the great play under center from quarterback Mark Butterfield, who finished the season at the top or near the top of just about every passing category in the conference, as he was third in completions, second in yards per attempt, third in completion percentage, third in passer rating, third in passing yards, and most importantly, first in passing touchdowns, as his 19 touchdowns made him the first Stanford quarterback since John Elway all the way back in 1982 to lead the conference in that category. He was aided by great play from wide receiver Mark Harris, who finished third in the conference with 57 receptions, third in the conference with 6 receiving touchdowns, fourth in the conference with 984 receiving yards, and fourth in the conference with 17.3 yards per reception. And the team had help with a very strong passing defense that held opponents to just 228 yards per game and a completion percentage just over 54%. And 2 players in Josh Madsen and Leroy Pruitt who had 4 interceptions, making Stanford the only team in the Pac-10 to have multiple players with at least 4 picks. Long story short, Stanford was an awfully good football team in 1995, and at a minimum, they were way better than anyone thought they'd be, with the Cardinals surpassing even the most optimistic fans' expectations for the season. So you would think that this team would be going bowling no problem, right? I mean, it's a fair assumption to make. A team in a power conference that was ranked at one point ended the season with a winning record in conference play and only lost 3 of its 11 games is sure to be a lock to play in a bowl game of some kind. Just look at the 1994 season, where every team that had at least 7 wins, minus Washington, who was ineligible due to conference sanctions, made a bowl, with USC making the Cotton Bowl, Washington State making the Alamo Bowl, Arizona making the Freedom Bowl, and Oregon winning the conference and getting the Rose Bowl bid. Look at the 1993 season, where every team that had at least 7 wins minus Washington, who was once again ineligible due to sanctions, made a bowl, with Arizona making the Fiesta Bowl, USC making the Freedom Bowl, Cal making the Alamo Bowl, and UCLA winning the conference and making the Rose Bowl. Every Pac-10 team with at least 7 wins made a bowl in 1992, and in 1991, and in 1990, and in 1989. You get the idea. The last time a Pac-10 team with 7 wins was eligible, but didn't make a bowl game, was the 1988 Arizona Wildcats, who were left out despite a 7-4 record overall. However, there were more bowls in 1995 than there were in 1988. And remember, Stanford was 7-3-1. The last time a Pac-10 team had 3 or fewer losses and missed a bowl game despite being eligible was 1980, with USC and UCLA not making it. It had been a decade and a half since a team like Stanford was kept out of a bowl. And the players wanted to play in one, with quarterback Kwame Ellis saying, "If you talk to any other team in this league, they're going to say we play hard, whistle to whistle. We deserve to go to a bowl game." Quarterback Mark Butterfield said, "I definitely think we're worthy of a bowl game. It would be tough if we didn't." And running back Mike Mitchell said, "We did what it takes to get to a bowl. We put ourselves in a good position." Head coach Tyrone Willingham wanted to go to a bowl, saying, "I feel we deserve a bowl game. I feel our attraction would guarantee an outstanding bowl game." And athletic director Ted Leland wanted to go to a bowl, saying, "I believe this team is worthy of a bowl game. We will be working very hard to pursue another bowl." So with all of that being said, what's the issue? Well, part of how bowl games survive is by making money, obviously. And part of how you make money is by getting people to come to this game, by hitting attendance quotas, and by getting people to travel to the city of the game and support the local economy that way. Which means that if you're a school, especially back then, you've got to express interest in playing the game. You have to say, "We want to play here." You have to assure that a certain number of fans will come. And you have to put in the work to show that you care. It doesn't have to be a ton of work, but just a little bit to show that you want to be there, and you respect the bowl game. It's like wanting to get credit for a group project. You don't have to be the one formatting everything and making all the edits and typing everything in, but at the very least, you've got to log into the Google Doc a few times so that you and the people you're associated with know that you're engaged and have an idea of what's going on. Which is what makes this story all the more remarkable. Because for some bizarre reason, Stanford higher-ups, especially athletic director Ted Leland, took the insane approach of doing, quite literally, absolutely nothing. Why the school did nothing, I don't know. But I'm not talking that they did less than other schools who might have been interested in playing the game. I'm talking nothing. There were 2 bowl games that were in line to possibly take Stanford, as you had the Independence Bowl down in Shreveport, and you had the Liberty Bowl in Memphis. And at no point whatsoever did Stanford contact either of them. Not a phone call to express interest, not a meeting with a representative to express interest. Heck, email existed back then. AOL had millions of users by this point and was a household name. Not even an email? Not even one measly email to say, we're interested if you want us? Literally, all Stanford had to do was the minimum, and they couldn't even do that. Which is what left bowl officials in a predicament. On one hand, Stanford was absolutely qualified to play in a bowl game. We saw that with their record, their on-field product, and with what history has told us with teams of this caliber going bowling in the Pac-10. On the other hand, they had done literally nothing to show that they were even the slightest bit interested. As Carl Mikovich, the chairman of the Independence Bowl, said on the Cardinal, we're interested in a Pac-10 team, and that includes Stanford and Arizona State. We haven't heard much from Stanford, and Arizona State has pursued us vigorously. He then added, Arizona State has pursued us strongly. We want the team that has the desire to be here. So far, we've had no interest from Stanford outside the local press. And the Liberty Bowl echoed those thoughts, with Steve Earhart, the managing partner for the Liberty Bowl, saying on Stanford, we're going to try to analyze all the possibilities, but a lot depends on the interests of the universities. We have not been contacted by Stanford. He then added, Stanford is up on our board. If they have any interest in us, we'd be glad to talk to them. Translation, we want to help you out. We want to send you bowling, but you're doing us no favors and aren't helping us at all. Just give us something. It's almost like that episode of SpongeBob where all he has to do in order to get his boating license is write 10 words about what he learned in boating school. And he can't even do that. Literally, just the bare minimum. That's all we ask. Just contact us, for crying out loud, and we'll send you to a bowl game. And I guess that was the wake-up call that Stanford needed. Because after much delay, and after just twiddling his thumbs and doing nothing whatsoever, and nearly costing his team a shot at a bowl game in the process, Leland finally got in touch with Liberty Bowl officials, which led to the team getting invited to the game that you saw at the beginning, and the game that you're watching right now against East Carolina. As Leland said when Stanford got the bid, in a quote that felt so over the top that it felt like he got the message loud and clear once he was put on blast for doing nothing, we are absolutely thrilled to accept. This is a real thrill for us. We're happy to come out on top. We're flabbergasted and honored to be chosen over some of the great teams. I think we're accused many times of not being great salesmen, but the team sold itself. And the game drew over 47,000 fans, making it the highest attended Liberty Bowl since 1991's game between Air Force and Mississippi State. So mission accomplished, even if it was absolute chaos, and unnecessary chaos for that matter, to get to that point. So what's the moral of the story? Sometimes doing the bare minimum is enough, but you have to at least be willing to do that, or else no one is going to throw you a lifeline your way. Stanford getting an invite to a bowl game in 1995 should have been a foregone conclusion. It should have been easy. It should not have even been a concern, and should not have been the dramatic affair that it ended up being. Because in 1995, the Stanford Cardinal almost committed the cardinal sin of campaigning for a bowl game. Get your official Jaguar Gator 9 merchandise by going to jg9shop.com, and be sure to like and subscribe, as it really helps the channel out a lot. Join me every Wednesday night where we'll play NFL Trivia for cash prizes at 9 p.m. Eastern over on Twitch. To learn more about the history of the NFL, subscribe to Jaguar Gator 9. To learn more about the history of Major League Baseball, subscribe to Jamworgator 7. Also, special thanks to all of our Patreon supporters for helping out the channel. Your support is greatly appreciated. See how you can become a patron and request future video topics in the description below.